In this video, I'm going to be talking about 5 things you want to do when you get a new fish tank, and 5 things you need to know before you get a fish tank. Just some things that I wish I had known and that everybody needs to know, even if you've already bought a fish tank. You know, these 5 things should help you out and you should already be doing them. I've got loads of things, loads of points that I can do for beginners, but I'm just going to do 5 at the moment. So number 1 is really, you don't really have to do this, but it's good practice. Fish, when you're choosing fish, I always see beginners with 2 different species of every fish. So for instance, I'll have 2 panda cories, 2 swordtails, 2 neon tetras, 2 penguin tetras, things like that. Just have 2 of every fish species, which isn't really a good idea. Like, they might do okay for a bit, but you know, long term the fish aren't gonna behave the best. And the reason for this is, you know, in the wild, you know, most of the fish, they hang around together in groups of, you know, thousands, hundreds, thousands. You know, there's loads of them. And then if you just get 2 on their own, like 2 neon tetras, they're not going to do very well. Especially if one dies as well, you're just going to have like 1 tetra. So it's best to keep all the same species. That's what I do anyway. So for instance, in here I bought 5 adult black swordtails. I'm pretty sure you can mix the colours of swordtails, I'm not sure, but I just got 5. And I've got a couple Otocinclus. But instead of, you know, mixing them up, 2 swordtails, 2 neon tetras, 2 panda cories, you know, instead of doing that, I've just got 5 adult black swordtails. And you know, they'll do much better because it's just them and they're in a group. They've also had loads of babies, as I've mentioned before. I've got 8 of these babies. Just trying to focus. It's too small. They've had 8 babies, and they've grown so much as well. They're, you know, perhaps half the size of the adults already. So yeah, that's number 1. Keeps the same fish species really. They'll just do a lot better. So number 2 is going to be to upgrade your filter. So a lot of people, they buy the all-in-one tank systems. So you get the tank, the hood with the light, the filter, the heater. You'll get the all-in-one system, which is good, you know, because they're cheap and they do work. But the filters that come with them normally are really bad, especially in capacity for filter media. So for instance, this tank is an Interpet 60 litre tank, and I've had it for a few years now, and over time I've just replaced everything. So I replaced the heater with the Eheim heater. I've replaced the hood with a different light, an LED light, because it wasn't even LED. So I got an LED light and took the hood off and just put some plastic sheeting on the top for evaporation. And the filter, yeah, the filter. So I got a really small little filter with this, and I knew straight away that it was a bit rubbish. So the first thing I bought was this here. Now this is a fluval U2. It's about 30 quid at the time. Don't know how much it is now. Now you can tell straight away that this isn't the type of filter that would come in an all-in-one system, because it's quite big and it is quite powerful. You know, they wouldn't sell this in a starter aquarium. You know, some starter aquariums might have good enough filters, they might be quite big, they might be powerful, but filters like this don't typically come with them. So first thing I did when I bought this tank was I knew the filter wouldn't be good enough, so I bought this, and it was really good as well, like really powerful. Also, you can get a lot of media in there, so you get all your sponges down the sides, and you put your ceramic media in this little cage in the middle, and it all pops out. You know, it's a good quality filter, and you need a good quality filter. So when you get a tank, get something like this for about 60 litre. This could probably do like 100 litres, 120 litres, but always over filter. So if the filter says, you know, 200 litres on the box, use it on a 60 litre or 100 litre. You know, try and double it or something. You can't go wrong with over filtration. They do try and rip you off, the manufacturers. So for instance, I did have that fluval U2 in there, but it takes up quite a bit of room. So I changed it for an APS hang-on back filter, because it takes up a lot less room in the actual tank, and all the media is sitting outside of the tank. And it's quite powerful. It's rated for a tank a lot bigger than this one. So I've got that in there at the moment, but it came with these. So you put your media in it and then you stick that in the front and the water passes through it. But if you hear it, it's got carbon in it, activated carbon. And what they tell you to do is to replace the carbon every couple of weeks, you know, 2, 3, 4 weeks. They say, oh, replace the carbon, and you can tell by the shape of this that you have to buy their actual one. You know, you can't just get some activated carbon. They want you to buy this, and especially if you're a beginner, you're going to go out and buy these because it tells you to. So the first thing I did when I put that hang-on back filter in was just take these out. Just take them straight out, because you don't need activated carbon. Activated carbon is used really just to remove medicines and stuff that you've put in the tank. If you've contaminated the tank with something, then the activated carbon will purify the water. But if you haven't done that, then there's no need. And some people say that activated carbon reduces, you know, nutrients and that in the water for plants. They say that activated carbon doesn't go well with plants, but I don't know about that. But all the filters I get, just take out the carbon and replace it with more sponges or more ceramic media. You don't really need the carbon, but keep it just in case you need it. Or if you do get it, you can leave it in there for the first couple of weeks. So if it says replace every 3 weeks, you could use it for 3 weeks and then just bin it and just don't replace it. Because the thing is, you can't leave it in there as well, because activated carbon absorbs all the harmful chemicals. If you don't replace it, it gets clogged and then it all goes back in the water. So if you think you'll forget about it or you won't replace it, it's best to just bin it straight away. So that was point number 2. Replace your filter to a good filter. Yeah, get a good filter and take out the carbon. So point number 3 now is, this is an important one, make sure that the surface of your water is moving. Try and show you this. got some lettuce growing in the top of here just to see what it does. See the roots? Just lettuce. Move that for now. Okay, so I've took the lid off so you can see. So yeah, number 3, water movement on the surface, so surface water movement. So as you can see, this filter is like a waterfall, so it gets quite a lot of water movement on the surface, and it's literally just pouring into the tank. Especially when the water drops through, you get this kind of, you know, water movement underneath, and it pushes all the water throughout the tank, so that's quite good. Because water movement on the surface is called surface agitation. It draws oxygen into the water, so if there's no water movement on the top, you're going to get less oxygen in the water, and your fish are all going to be at the top trying to get air. So always have a lot of surface agitation. So this end of the tank has that big filter doing that, and then at this end, just to make sure, I've got this air stone right at the other end. And obviously, you know, there's a lot of water agitation this side, so I've got both ends covered. There's no dead spots, and a lot of the water is moving around the tank. And the good thing about air stones is it pushes water from the bottom and it pushes it up, and it goes across there. So the whole tank's got quite a good water movement going on, which is exactly what you want. So that is point number 3. So now point number 4 is about plants. So I'm quite obsessed with aquarium plants, and I'm also quite lazy. So when I put an aquarium plant in the aquarium, I don't expect to have to do much with it. I don't want to add fertilisers every day. I don't want to replace CO2 bottles. You know, I don't want to spend 300, 200 quid on a powerful light. I just want to put the plant in and I just want it to grow. So actually in this tank, I've got quite lucky. I got these carpet of S-repens that I've done a video or 2 on. So this whole carpet is just S-repens, and I planted it sparsely, not knowing what it was going to do or how well it was going to do, and it looked really bad. Like, looking back at photos, it looked really bad, but now it's got to be, you know, a few months to nearly a year. It was probably over a year actually, but it's really good, doing really well. For the majority of the time I had this in here, I didn't have any fertilisers or anything in it. But recently, a couple of months back, I thought I wanted to boost the growth so it was a bit quicker. So I just planted a load of root tabs all underneath the substrate. And I've got all these swords. I think they're called Echinodorus argentineus or something like that. I'll put a link in the description. But I've got loads of these growing, and all I've got is a few root tabs, and I've only just started using them. So point number 4 is, if you want plants, just get them. You know, go on eBay, pay 5 quid, get a few plants, and just put them in your tank and see what happens. I get a lot of people asking me about my plants, how I plant them, what I use, and the only thing I do is I just stick them in there. I don't worry about lighting or CO2 or fertilisers. You know, if you want a certain type of plant, you know, make sure it's an easy to grow plant, you know, none of these red ones, because they will just melt most types of red plants. Some of the carpet plants are really hard to grow, like the micro carpet plants. So what you want to do is make sure it's an easy plant and just put it in your tank and see what happens. and a lot of the time you'll put it in, and a couple of weeks later, a couple of days later, it will look really bad. If you just leave it, you know, and obviously unless it's completely melted and it's floating around, but if you just leave it, it will come back. Like this, I think this is Sagittaria, like this grass here at the back. I put a couple of these in and it didn't do anything for about a month, 2 months, and it looked like it was going to die. And then I checked recently and it's sprouting new ones up everywhere, which I need to pull out, or I might just leave. They're sprouting new ones everywhere, so the plants do take a long time to settle and you know, reproduce. So yeah, that's point number 4. If you want some plants, just get them and see what happens. Just experiment with the plants and don't think too much about them. Don't worry if they die. You know, just keep trying and try and balance out the, you know, the how much light that goes into the tank, how many hours it's on for, you know, nutrients, things like that. Just make sure it's all balanced. If you start getting algae, turn the lights off for a longer period and add more plants. So, you know, that's why I've got so many plants, because I don't want to deal with algae. And that's why I've got pothos, because I don't want to deal with algae or bad water quality, and pothos helps a lot, especially when you've got so much of it like I have. So yeah, that's plants, number 4. So the last one, number 5, is, you know, before you get an aquarium, you need to Google the nitrogen cycle. You know, how to cycle your tank. This is the most important one, and this is why people get new fish and they all die. So this is the last point, point number 5. Like I said, I've got loads more points, so I might make a second video. But for this point, number 5, do your research on the nitrogen cycle. So fish food and fish waste produces ammonia, and ammonia will kill your fish. Ammonia is the chemical in the water. It will kill your fish, burn them, whatever, and that's how people's fish die. So what the filter does is the filter uses this ammonia and builds up good bacteria on its sponges and on its filter media, and this good bacteria turns it into nitrites, turns the ammonia into nitrites, and then the nitrites then get turned into nitrates, and nitrates is a less harmful chemical than ammonia or nitrites. And then water changes and your plants will remove the nitrates from the water. So that's the nitrogen cycle. If you don't cycle your tank before you get your fish will end up dying. So if you just do a quick Google search or ask people on fish forums, you know, I used a lot of fish forums when I first started out, and generally the people on there are pretty nice and they'll tell you everything you need to know. But the nitrogen cycle is something you need to know if you want your fish to be alive. These babies are eating my lettuce. The baby swordtails, baby black swordtails. Swordtails really hungry all the time, really aggressive eaters. They'll eat anything. And at the moment, they're eating the roots of my lettuce. So anyway, yeah, that's 5 points. You know, if you're a new fish, if you're new to the fish hobby, or if you just got a tank, make sure you're doing those 5 things. You know, number 1 doesn't really matter about keeping the same species of fish. Like, it does matter, but you know, if you've already got them, just try and add to their numbers maybe, or take some back to the fish shop. So number 1 isn't that much of a big deal, really. If you have, you know, a pair of every fish from the aquarium store, then I'd suggest to take some back and add to the numbers of the ones you got. So if you've got 2 species of every Kori, I suggest keeping the 2 that you got, take the rest back and get at least 6. Same with other fish as well. You know, if you've got every species of tetra, you know, take some back, add to the numbers. You want at least 6 minimum of any species of fish, really. You know, whether that's Corydoras, swordtails, tetras, rainbow fish. You want at least 6. You don't want 1 of every species or 2 of every species. So number 2 was upgrade your filter, take out the carbon. Number 3, make sure your water surface ripples so you can get oxygen into the tank for your fish. You don't want them all gulping at the surface. Number 4, if you want some plants, just put them in. Don't be scared to add any plants. You know, they don't cost that much really. And then number 5, the most important one of all of them in the entire hobby, is do your research on the nitrogen cycle. So thanks for watching. If you find these helpful, let me know, and I might do another video on another 5 pointers for new people in the aquarium hobby. So thanks a lot.